Welcome to another episode of Why Real Estate, where we go in depth and detail into everything related to your real estate needs, buying, selling, investing in property, and what are the things that can make a difference in order for you to get the most value out of your property, as well as what to look for when you're trying to purchase a property. Now today we're fortunate enough to have Brody Price with us from Complete Restoration. Welcome, Brody.
Thank you.
Excited to have you here with us. It's actually very critical what your company does with Complete Restoration. I've referred and used Complete Restoration several times, and the key is in the name, I've noticed, right? A lot of restoration companies just do the tear out, but aren't licensed or don't want to do the actual restoration part. From that standpoint, Brody, why is Complete Restoration needed and why is it important?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You know, a lot of local companies around here, they just tend to stick with just the disaster cleanup. They don't really like to focus on the repairs, and that's where we really like to differentiate and stand out. Our company motto is perfect again. We'd love to come in, of course, do the cleanup, make sure the home is properly taken care of, that there's not going to be any secondary issues after the fact. But then our goal and purpose is to put your home back to the pre-loss condition. So before fire, smoke, mold or water damage, we want to bring the home back to its original condition there for you.
And there's the obvious disaster type cleanups that I've referred, Complete Restoration to happily, heartily. They do the job right, and it's critical because it's a reflection of my business when I refer a business, okay? And there's also the instances where in a home, we do a thermal test and it shows some mold in the wall or at the base of the wall. And once that happens, you don't know how big of a problem it is, right? A few years ago, I called Complete Restoration for a client that I was listing his house that likely would have sold for around, as is condition, around $270,000. Well, they dug a French drain around the outside because the outside sprinklers had been wetting the base of the house. It was just on a slab. Turns out that it wasn't just wetting the base of the house and needed a French drain. The entire interior walls, that water had climbed up and was probably a good 3 or 4 feet up the walls. Of course, I had to call Complete Restoration, and thankfully, because of the work that they do, they ended up selling that home for about $335,000. And so that's just an example that I've had, with the service you guys render. What are some good reasons to call Complete Restoration?
Yeah, definitely water damage is probably the biggest thing that we see here in Utah. A lot of times people during spring cleaning, they start looking around in places that they normally don't check out in their home and decide to look under, kitchen vanity or the bathroom vanity and see some mold growth going on there. And a lot of times the water damage is a very slow leak. So it's not something that's just gonna immediately flood your basement and that you notice right away. It's kind of that long-term process, and that's what kind of gets the mold growth to occur. So kind of the biggest thing is just being able to look for those spots in different spaces, see where the leak's coming from to see how extensive the damage is. The quicker we can jump on that, the more money that we're able to save the homeowner, the insurance companies, and just overall it makes it a lot smoother of a process the sooner that you notice and can jump on an issue than rather waiting on it.
And I think reputation is huge in this. Complete Restoration's been around how many years now?
We're going on 26 years now.
Do an excellent job. The key with that reputation is they're very quick to respond. They work with all kinds of insurance companies, virtually everyone out there. They get their workers out there quick to assess the situation. You know what you're going to pay before they start the work. Everything's very upfront, very honest, very thorough, okay? Going into it what your insurance is going to cover or not. Is there anything else I've missed as far as your reputation at Complete Restoration?
Yeah, I think just with the years of experience that we have and getting to know the different people in the insurance world, when it comes to the home and knowing the different carriers, we're pretty familiar with what insurance does and does not cover. So if it's going to be an out-of-pocket expense, we try our best to work with the homeowner and make sure that they're aware of any of those upfront costs. So that way we don't just jump into the work and all of a sudden insurance isn't going to cover it. It's most of the time that we're able to help determine that before any work begins. And it just helps everybody to be on the same page. That way there's no miscommunication. Nobody gets upset about, being liable for one thing when they said or heard that they shouldn't be. So
So what are some things you recommend? I mean, I know last year was a record-setting year as far as water damage because of all the water that we had last winter, especially all the snow that came down. I remember a guy that you work with telling me that they had broken a record like one day after the other number of calls, which isn't always that manageable, you know, for your teams and your contractors and everything. But what are some things people can do to avoid disaster, whether it be a flooded basement, you know, fire, mold? What are things they can do to avoid those things so they don't have to call complete restoration?
Probably the biggest thing that you can do is just make sure you stay on top of your general maintenance and upkeep on your home. Make sure that your gutters are getting cleaned, that they're properly draining. A lot of times water's coming down, and if it's not properly drained, water will just get in through anything, and will just continue to work its way. So if you can just make sure that water properly drains everywhere, that you have proper ventilation in your bathrooms, that helps to prevent any mold growth on the ceilings just from the humidity of hot showers. As far as fire goes, just make sure that, you know, you don't live next to a pyrotechnic or something. Fires tend to be just kind of pretty spontaneous here and there. And then just make sure that, you know, every time you check your sprinklers or your hose bibs, your water faucets, just make sure that, like when you got a deep freeze coming, that you disconnect any lines that need to be disconnected. And just make sure that you always routinely inspect different fixtures and lines in your home, and just make sure everything's working the way it should be. And if there is any sort of issue, call a plumber. Most of them will do free inspections. They can help guide you on the next course of action, and you don't have to call people like us to come and fix the home, but we're always there for you in case those disasters do happen.
I can't recommend Complete Restoration enough. Truly a great company that is run very well, very honest, and you know, this is for you as the consumer so that you maximize the value of your property, but that you're also aware of what to look for as you're purchasing a property. And this company is excellent for that. Is there anything else you'd want to add, Brody, that we think the audience should know?
Don't be afraid to give somebody a call. A lot of times we see homeowners try to tackle stuff themselves. One thing that we do love to do is, you know, sometimes we get a call from a homeowner that's just curious. We'll go out there, we'll inspect it, and then they say, hey, we'd like to tackle this ourselves. Always call an expert, get their guidance and counsel before you jump on some project that you may not be familiar with. Because a lot of times we have to come in and kind of fix mistakes that people just decided to take on a project themselves, and they didn't know what to do, and it wasn't done properly, and the issue got worse. So just give somebody a call, have them come out, give you some guidance on that, and let's resolve it the right way the first time. Whether or not we do it, you do it, it's always important to make sure an expert gets involved.
Brody, appreciate you. Thanks for coming on today. That was excellent.
Thank you, appreciate it.